13 years ago, James Cameron's Avatar was released. A science fiction action film about an alien tribe fighting against human invaders. One of the most anticipated films of 2009 became not just a box office hit, but possibly the ultimate blockbuster of all time. Winner of 3 Oscars and the subject of countless parodies. Avatar still holds the title of the highest-grossing film in history and is arguably the last major premiere that, it seems, everyone, regardless of age, gender, or attitude towards cinema, watched. What is the reason for its overwhelming success? Why is the simplicity of the plot not a disadvantage, but a strength? And how did James Cameron revolutionize 3D technology? As the release of the second Avatar approaches, we answer the main questions about the first film. At the time of its release, Avatar was considered by many to be a synonym for escapism and the demise of true cinema. In this sense, it is indicative that at the 2010 Oscars, the Academy preferred The Hurt Locker, a semi-documentary drama by Catherine Bigelow about war and post-traumatic stress disorder, to Cameron's blockbuster. Nowadays, accusations that Avatar is a soulless studio attraction, interesting only for its computer graphics, seem somewhat unfair. The escapist function of cinema has been important from its very inception, and filmmakers have always used various technological innovations to attract audiences to theaters. Once upon a time, the cinema itself was such a novelty. Color images in widescreen format, surround sound and complex stunts, inventive special effects. Every era had its own Avatar. The uniqueness of James Cameron's project lies in the fact that despite the enormous budget and innovative graphics, it is primarily a very personal and authorial film, in which the creator's many years of experience are visible, from his favorite blue color that appears in all Cameron's films to the deep-sea flora and fauna, which inspired the inhabitants of the world of Pandora, and of course, the environmental agenda. This is, for example, the fundamental difference between Avatar and box office hits of the past decades, which are either sequels and remakes of well-known franchises, or based on well-recognized series of books, comics, and video games, and are also unmistakably identified as purely producer-driven projects, calculated, filled with fan service, and high-tech attractions. For Cameron, technology or box office returns were never an end in themselves. Yes, each of his films made a breakthrough in computer graphics, as was the case with the innovative imitation of water in The Abyss and the liquid T-1000 in the second Terminator, but first there was always a bright image, a flight of the artist's imagination, and only then did the task arise of how to embody it on the screen. Even in Titanic, the main blockbuster of the 90s, visual effects did not overshadow the love story and were used imperceptibly only to supplement the painstaking work of artists in recreating the ship's scenery and the details of its sinking. In Avatar, the first things that appeared were the planet Pandora and its inhabitants, and only then the technical task of making the audience believe in them. The film, almost entirely consisting of the interaction of a multitude of computer-generated characters and scenery, greatly developed motion capture technology, which became popular after The Lord of the Rings. For example, to avoid the uncanny valley effect, as in Robert Zemeckis' Polar Express, the camera even captured changes in the position of the hero's pupils, allowing all nuances of the actors' performances to be preserved. In addition, it was important for the director to combine computer graphics with practical effects and real stunts to make the action feel real. For this same purpose, after the end of the filming period, scenes in which the actors' movements had already been captured were played back for the director, and he personally stood with the camera, as if reshooting these episodes, choosing angles and adding life to the film. But the main attraction of the film was 3D. James Cameron's new passion, which was both an innovative technology to attract viewers to theaters and worked for the story. Attempting to break free from the flat cinema screen has been tried since its inception. The first stereoscopic films were shown to the public in 1910, and roughly once every 2 decades, 3D cinema became trendy, but each time it was short-lived and without much success. To create the illusion of 3D, the human eye sees 2 almost identical images that come together in the brain to form a single volumetric picture. The problem is that the brain quickly becomes accustomed to this illusion and cannot distinguish it from a regular flat screen, and frames in the stereo bar had to differ from color rendering, which made the film look sloppy. The answer stopped working as an artistic technique. Everything changed with Avatar, which took 3D technology out of the ghetto of nature documentaries. Cameron fell in love with 3D back in 1995 when he made a short sequel to the second Terminator for Universal Studios, but the cameras and production costs were too high at the time. In the 2000s, there was a transition from analog film to digital imaging, and James Cameron accelerated this process by convincing theater owners to replace film projectors with digital ones that support 3D. After Avatar, all studios began to make their big projects in 3D to attract viewers to theaters and justify the high ticket price. The problem is that subsequent stereoscopic films were converted to the innovative format, sometimes against the will of their authors, and Cameron's sci-fi was made to suit the features of the technology. In a sense, even this video essay cannot convey how Avatar works correctly. The only adequate way to analyze it would be to remount the theatrical copy and view the film in a theater. The film does not have a shaky camera or overly dark shots. Cameron does not exploit simple techniques like the sudden appearance of an object from the screen. He gives time to look around and literally examine every leaf on the tree. No, this is not Terrence Malick or Andrei Tarkovsky's film to meditate here, but the director builds the film on deep mise-en scenes and long but dynamic camera movements and flights over open spaces, which are contrasted with narrow, gray, and dismal rooms where Earthlings huddle. Avatar is a portal to a new world, not an amusement park. James Cameron managed to return the audience to the cinema with a new experience that still attracts viewers today. James Cameron's film is a return to the origins of cinema, when it was a waking electric dream and a journey into new unexplored worlds. Just as Jake Sully doesn't understand which reality is real for him, human or Gnostics, the viewer, according to the director's intention, should lose themselves in the world of Pandora and find they're not just a high-tech attraction, but a real political statement. Cameron had been contemplating the film since the mid-90s, but Avatar was only released in 2009, just a year after the financial crisis and a decade of failed American military companies in Iraq and Afghanistan. As is often the case with mass culture, the film turned out to be a reflection of the times, relevant even 15 years later. For example, the aesthetic of video blogging, which had not yet become part of the film language at the end of the 2000s, anticipates screen life, and the concept of the Gnostics tribe's collective memory resembles the role the internet plays now and is even explained through the image of a supercomputer. Today, the viewer could easily describe this film as progressive. At the center of the story is a person with a disability, and his guide, lover, and savior is a strong woman. The entire story of the struggle of the Aborigines against the invaders can be easily read as a critique of colonial policy when a stronger neighbor invades a foreign territory for the sake of appropriating resources. All these motifs are characteristic of Cameron's work, whom the philosopher Slavoj Zizek once called a Hollywood Marxist. Corporate critique had already been present in Aliens. If you look closely, Titanic turns out to be a film about class inequality. The plot of Avatar is similar to Kevin Costner's Dances with Wolves and Disney's Pocahontas, in which attempts were made to understand the colonial experience of America. They all continue the long tradition of Westerns, in which the familiar structure of good cowboys and bad savage Indians is questioned, and former enemies are viewed from a humanistic perspective. Avatar is often criticized for its overly simple plot, sometimes even accused of plagiarism. However, this is not entirely fair. Firstly, the director had to introduce the audience to the world of Pandora and make them empathize with the blue humanoids, so the story had to be familiar enough for us, the viewers, to gradually learn about and love this distant planet, and to identify with it so much that we could rejoice in the defeat of our own species in the end. Secondly, the film's technological boldness, with its many computer-generated characters and 3D, is so great that the popular romantic plot, with its characters from warring worlds, had to spare the viewer from the need to closely follow the twists and turns of the story, so that they could enjoy pure cinematic pleasure. Thirdly, in Avatar, Cameron creates, in essence, a myth of the Gnostics people and therefore appeals to basic concepts, stripping the drama down to archetypes. So the simplicity of the plot and the parallels with the present are in fact reflections on eternal themes. For example, what greed leads to or how to remain human. In the second part, James Cameron takes viewers back to the planet Pandora. The sequel remains the director's personal statement on family, ecology, and human nature. As before, he does everything to make us believe in an unfamiliar world, to feel like guests in this house for 3 hours, and to experience what happens when this house is destroyed. The original Avatar can evoke tears over a blown-up tree, awaken empathy for 3-meter blue creatures, and remind us of the importance of putting ourselves in someone else's shoes. All of this is relevant at any time and in any place. And in this whimsical synthesis of reality and a magical invented world lies the true magic of cinema that Avatar gives us.